We're talking today with Philip Cornelius of Grand Rapids, Michigan. The interviewer is James Smither of the Grand Valley State University Veterans History Project. Okay, Philip, can you start us off with some background on yourself? And to begin with, where and when were you born?
June 1st, 1925, Blodgett Hospital,
And what town is that in?
East Grand Rapids.
Okay, East Grand Rapids, Michigan. All right. Now, did you grow up in East Grand Rapids?
Yes,
Okay. What did your family do for a living then?
my family was in the furniture business.
Okay. And
Well, they owned the Wolverine Brass Works.
okay. All right. Now, what was business like for them in the 30s?
Good.
Okay. So it's the
They in those days they only sold direct to plumbers.
Mhm.
And in some stores, but that's what they had the Wolverine Brass Works.
Okay. So you did okay during the Depression then?
Yes.
Okay. All right. Now, did you know people who had more trouble?
Oh, probably. Yeah, but you got to remember, I was in high school in those days.
Okay. Now, when you were going to high school, before Pearl Harbor, did you pay much attention to what was happening in the world, or?
Oh, yes. Yeah, I always kept up with the news, and I also knew I was going to be in the service. You know, by the time I was 18 when I graduated,
Mm-hmm.
because I had rheumatic fever in the 8th grade, and I was in bed for 6 months, because that's what they did in those days.
Mm-hmm.
So you didn't have a heart problem, and that was terrible. But I kept up with my grades, and I graduated when I was at 18, so it wasn't so bad.
Okay. Now, do you remember how you heard about Pearl Harbor?
Oh my, yes.
So how did you learn about it?
Oh, radio.
Okay. Now, when that news came, was that a surprise?
Not really. I was very, very active with what was going on in the world, and I knew we were all in trouble.
Mm-hmm.
And and also because I was 18, I went in pretty fast.
Right. Well, you were 16 when Pearl Harbor happened.
Yes.
So you were still in school, but
Yeah.
you knew as soon as you finished high school,
Yeah.
you were on. Now, did you actually complete high school at the time?
Yes.
Okay. And then when did you actually enter the service?
Boy, I would say June of '43.
Okay, so right after you graduated?
Oh, yeah.
Okay. Now, what branch of the service did you join?
I was a Seabee, Navy,
Yep.
construction.
Okay. Now, when you enlisted, did you get to pick that, or did they just send you there?
Well, I was wearing, just like you, I wore glasses.
Mm-hmm.
And all of a sudden I was restricted, which was lucky. Because at that time the Seabees were just being formed, and I could wear glasses.
Mm-hmm.
Because we were truck drivers and construction and all that stuff.
Right.
So they weren't specific, and it was that or the Army.
Mm-hmm.
And this was right after the bulge and all that stuff. And
Well, The bulge comes 1944.
Yeah.
So when you first enlisted, that wasn't the issue.
Yeah.
Okay. Now go back to the time when you enlisted. Where did you report to first?
I'm
Or where did they send you for training?
trying to think.
Well, did you go to Great Lakes?
Foggy in my
Okay.
memory.
All right. Did you go to Great Lakes?
Yes, no,
Okay.
well, I was in Great Lakes for a little time, but that's when I get in the construction business
Mm-hmm.
in the Seabees. So it was different. It was Navy, but I had different witnesses. Like when I saw the bomber hit the
Right.
Empire State
Okay.
Building.
All right. Well, we're trying to kind of talk about sort of the training that you got when you first went in. So did you go to Great Lakes for processing, or did you do boot camp
No,
there?
it was boot camp.
Okay.
We were trained by the Marines.
All right. And so what did that boot camp training consist of?
Everything. That was so long ago. It was about 6 weeks,
Mm-hmm.
and I became a heavy equipment operator.
Mm-hmm.
Uh, I didn't use I did do work as a grader,
Mm-hmm.
but mostly I was a truck driver.
Okay. Now, did they give you specialized training for that? Did they teach you how to drive the big equipment?
Oh yeah,
And where did you do that training?
Great Lakes.
It was still Great Lakes? Okay. Now, was that part of the boot camp, or was that after the boot camp?
After the boot camp.
Okay. All right. Now, when you were being trained by the Marines, did you get a lot of discipline?
Oh my,
Did they treat you like you were Marine recruits?
yeah.
Okay.
Well, we trained with them, you know, basically, because we were the truck drivers and all that stuff for the Marines.
Okay. Yeah.
So,
All right. So you would serve alongside them, and so you trained
Oh,
alongside
yes.
them. Okay. And then, now, how was it hard for you to adjust to life in the military?
no,
Okay.
I liked it.
Because Marine training has the reputation of being kind of unpleasant.
was.
All right.
But I didn't mind that. They were a little kinder to us because we were the support for all of their operations.
Okay. So they might need you later.
Yeah,
Okay. All right. Do you have an idea of how long you did the CB training?
oh gosh. It seemed like years, but it was just, I would say it was 3 months.
Okay. All right. So now you finish your training then. It's going to be probably late in 1943 at that point.
Yeah.
Okay. And once you complete the training, where did they send you?
Well, California to start with,
Okay.
and then we went out to the Hawaiian Islands, and from there we went to, I went to Attu in the Aleutians, where I spent most of my time.
Okay. Now, can you describe what Attu was like to live on?
It was rugged. It was good though. You gotta remember that we unloaded all the ships and we confiscated quite a lot of stuff. And we managed to in the wintertime, we used the snow to hide the confiscated stuff, and we took care of ourselves first, and then we took care of the Marines.
Okay. Now, what kind of construction work were you doing there?
Everything. I was basically a truck driver,
Okay. But,
big trucks.
but were they building bases or airfields?
Oh, yes, yeah. That's, basically, I was in construction.
Mm-hmm.
And I served in Africa, and I served in the far east, and the Aleutian Islands. So I was in quite a bit.
All right.
They moved us around. I was a heavy equipment operator, so I could pretty well pick what I wanted. So that's what I did.
Okay. Now, when you moved around, did your whole unit go, or did you go by yourself or with a small group?
Oh gosh, that I don't even remember. I was basically in a group.
Mm-hmm. Now, do you think it was a group of a few dozen men or several hundred? Or
Gosh.
okay.
That was so long. That was 43,
Mm-hmm.
44,
Right.
45.
Okay. Now, when you were on, I mean, how much snow did you get on the Aleutians?
Oh man, it never stopped. It would come and go because it's there. We were right on the divide between the Pacific Ocean and the Arctic Ocean.
Mm-hmm.
That we were on the line. So we had we figured in a year and a half or 2 years we saw the sun 30 days. That's all.
Okay.
All the storms formed right off Attu, and because that's where the warm water hit the cold water.
Mm-hmm. Now, did the warm water keep it from getting really cold? I mean, how cold would it get?
No, well, it was cold, but not. It wasn't like it. We were in the Arctic.
Mm-hmm.
On one side of us, we were the Arctic Ocean,
Right.
and the other was the Pacific. So all the storms we had, we figured we had in the 2 years we were there, we had 30 days of sunshine.
Right. Do you know, I mean, how cold did it get? Did it get below zero?
Oh, not too much.
Okay.
That's why we had so much snow.
Mm-hmm. All right. Now, I mean, who else was based on Attu with you? I mean, were there air units or Marines?
Everything.
Okay.
It was Attu was a major flyway. We had Army bombers, Navy bombers. We had.
Did you have seaplanes there?
Yeah, we had everything, and I'll never forget that we had one day when the North Pacific Fleet was in our harbor with 10 or 12 destroyers and 3 cruisers, and it was a fleet,
Mm-hmm.
and the Japs came over with a bunch of airplanes, and they hit such a heavy attack from all the ships and stuff. They dropped all their bombs in the ocean. They got one bomb got on the island, and one officer got a Purple Heart because he got a piece of shrapnel in his heel. That was a big story.
Okay. So was that the only time the enemy showed up while you were there?
Yeah.
Okay.
Well, they tried to, but we were the farthest island out, so they had to come at us first. But usually they didn't make it.
All right. So did you have fighter planes based there?
Oh, yeah.
Yeah. Okay.
We had Army and Navy.
Okay. Now, you said you were there for quite some time. Were you there? Do you remember where you were when the Japanese surrendered? Had you moved on by then?
Yeah. I think I was in around the San Francisco area
Okay.
at that time.
All right. Now, you mentioned that you did go to Japan.
Yeah.
So when did you do that?
Well, toward the end.
Mm-hmm. And when you went to Japan, what were you doing there?
I was a Seabee.
Okay. Now, were you building bases for the Americans? Yeah. Okay. And then when you were in Japan, did you see much of the Japanese people themselves?
Oh, yeah.
Okay. And were they civilians or military?
Yeah.
Okay.
I had also, I was had charge of, for a while, we had a big laundry, and I had German prisoners of war working for me, and they were great.
Okay. Now, where was that?
In California.
In California. Okay.
They were captured in Africa.
Mm-hmm.
They were the prime German when they took Africa.
Right.
And they were all, the ones I had, they were all college graduates and very smart and didn't want to go back to Germany. And they had to go back to Germany.
Okay.
Because that's the way it worked.
Mm-hmm.
But they liked the States, and they worked in the laundries and all that kind of stuff, and they liked the American girls.
Mm-hmm.
And they were interesting guys.
Okay. Now, had they been officers?
Oh, they were everything, but they were all graduates
Yeah.
of colleges and everything else.
Mm-hmm.
I had everything under me, and they were just really great guys. And they weren't looking forward to go back to Germany.
Okay. And then while you were in Japan, and did you have any Japanese who worked for you there?
Yes.
Okay. And what were they doing?
Oh, I can't. They were just workers.
Right. But were they working with you in the construction or?
Well, I had a laundry.
Mm-hmm. Okay.
And I was in charge of prisoners of war. And so I had a pretty good crew. They were all college graduates.
Right. Well, those were the Germans, though.
Yeah.
Yeah. But I was asking about when you were in Japan.
Well,
So when you were in Japan, did you see much of the destruction from the bombing, or was the area you were?
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah. But it's we were pretty well stuck in the bases because
Mm-hmm.
we pretty well chewed the area up itself during the war.
Okay. Okay. So you were in, now were you, do you remember what base you were at in Japan?
No,
Okay. All right. Were you close to Tokyo?
yeah,
Okay. And did you go into Tokyo?
yeah,
Okay. And what did you see there?
destruction. A lot of it.
Okay. Now some
They
part,
flattened it.
now some parts of Tokyo
Yeah.
hadn't been hit. And there's a business district and the Imperial Palace. I mean, did you see any of those things?
I don't remember.
Okay. Now, when you were in Japan, were there any discipline problems with your men?
No,
Okay, so they weren't going off and finding women or getting drunk or things like that.
oh, a little.
Okay. But not to the point where it was making too much trouble. Okay, all right. Now, you mentioned you stopped in some other places. Did you just stop, you mentioned Okinawa.
Yeah,
Did you do construction there?
yeah.
Okay.
I've forgotten about, well, I was a truck driver, so
Mhm.
I got this islands, but you know, it's so long ago, long
sure.
ago. And I was a kid in those days, so,
Hmm.
you know, I was, well, 20, 21, so it was an adventure.
Hmm. Okay. And you also got to the Philippines?
Yeah,
Okay. And then were you around Manila or someplace else?
well, I can't remember.
Okay. Do you remember much about what the places looked like or what you saw there?
Yeah. It was pretty well beat up. 'Cause we took a pretty good pounding there. We got pounded there when we were fighting there,
Mm-hmm.
and but you know that's so far back.
Mm-hmm.
My memory isn't as good as it used to be either.
Okay. Now, and then you also said that you went to Africa.
Yes,
And was that North Africa, like
Uh,
Morocco or Algeria or somewhere else?
we came over. It was near the Egyptian line,
Okay.
and I was a truck driver, so I got around a lot.
Okay. But in Egypt or someplace else?
Yeah, various places.
Okay. And when you were, I mean, if you went to Egypt, I mean, did you like go see the pyramids or anything like that?
yes.
Okay, so you were there. All right. And did you get to the Suez Canal?
Yeah,
Okay. So you're really just kind of back and forth moving
Oh, yeah.
all kinds of things all over the
Yeah.
place.
well, I was a truck driver.
Right. Now, were these mostly cargo trucks?
Yeah,
Okay, but not as opposed to dump trucks or something
No.
else? Okay. All right. And let's see. Okay, so how long do you think you stayed in the Navy after the war ended?
ooh,
Because it sounds like you got to a lot of places after the Aleutians.
yeah,
So did you go from the Aleutians back to California and then
Yeah.
other places?
yeah.
Yeah, okay. Yeah. So you think maybe you were in until early 1946?
Yeah.
Okay. Now, do you remember the point system? They're determining when you got to go home?
No,
Okay.
it was important, but we had quite a few Michigan guys in there, and one of my best friends was Bill DeVries, who was middleweight champion in the Golden Gloves, and so he he was a good friend of mine, so we got a little booze. when he went, he fought for the Navy in bases, and he was the champ he was the lightweight, and he got showered with booze and he didn't drink. So we had a little party, I remember, and we were drinking it all straight, and we're all sitting in the snow in our underwear outside of the barracks. We were stoned. Oh boy, it was bad. But it wasn't that bad, but yes, it was. Yeah, it really was.
Well, it's
We had
something.
a few casualties that didn't even make it out of the snow.
Mhm.
We had to take them in the Quonset hut that we were in. It was kind of, well, you know, we were at early age.
Right.
And you know, everybody got a, I was trying, we got a case of whiskey,
Mm-hmm.
of mixture, and we had enough for everybody in the barracks. Some of them didn't drink at all, so that doubled up on the other people, and we really got stoned.
Mhm.
It was bad,
Yeah.
awful.
So there wasn't always that much to do in the Aleutians then.
It sure wasn't.
Would you have extended periods when you were just stuck in the barracks because the weather was too bad?
Oh yeah.
Okay.
Well, that we were truck drivers,
Mm-hmm.
and I had a snowplow, and so that was my busy time.
Okay.
We had to keep the roads open,
Mm-hmm.
and we got a lot of snow, and we got a lot of rain. It's a very wet area,
Mm-hmm.
and the other thing is that it's the land of the midnight sun, you know. So we had only very, very short period of darkness. So,
Well, in the summer,
yeah.
but then in the winter you don't have much light
No,
at all.
that's right. Yes, it was dark all the time. But it was interesting. But what the hell, when you're only 18 and 20 and this kind of stuff, you can live with it.
Sure. All right. Now, are there other things that happened when you were in the service that kind of stand out in your memory?
Yeah, we went through an earthquake, and it was a pretty severe earthquake, and in the valley area outside of San Francisco,
Mhm.
and that was a memorable thing. All of a sudden, the lights were all jumping all over the place and shaking, and we'd never been in an earthquake before. But it's an experience, and actually moved a major highway nearby over about 4 or 5 feet, and it was something to watch the lights dancing all over the place, and there's no place you could go because everything was going.
Mm-hmm.
So it's a pretty good experience.
Yep. All right. Now, when you finished your time in the service, now, did they make an effort to encourage you to re-enlist, or were they just sending everybody home?
Yeah, basically they had plenty of people who wanted to stay in.
Okay. So you go home. Now, when you got home, what did you do?
I went to school,
You went to college?
yeah,
Okay, and where did you go to college?
Michigan,
All right. And what were you studying there?
business,
Okay. Um, and did that go well?
yes.
Okay. And then once you graduated from there, then what did you do?
I didn't graduate there
Okay.
because at that time, I'm trying to remember that, oh, my father had a crooked partner whose family were very wealthy to do in Cadillac. But we didn't, my dad didn't realize he was a gambler and bad. And all of a sudden their business went under. And he didn't have any control over it. So when I was in college, I didn't get involved with it that much. And I was on the GI Bill,
GI Bill?
the bill. And so I was set for it, but that was a trying time. And my grandfather owned the Wolverine Brass Company in Grand Rapids, and they were well set, but my father's brother Harold, he became an alcoholic, couldn't take the stress, and we had a lot of family problems around that time. But we survived.
Okay. So did you kind of leave school and come help out, or?
Yeah,
Okay. And then did you work for your grandfather or someone else?
yeah, I did.
Okay. All right. And then did you come back and live in East Grand Rapids, or did you?
Yeah.
Okay. All right.
I went to Michigan,
Mm-hmm.
and I didn't graduate because all of a sudden this thing took off and I had to get to work
Right.
and help out. But I completed my, over the time later,
Mm-hmm.
because I didn't need much more to do.
Okay.
But I enjoyed my time at Michigan. I was in a fraternity there, and I was a deke at Michigan. We had our own building downtown in Ann Arbor that was owned by the fraternity,
Mm-hmm.
and we used to march down the street with robes and stuff on.
Mm-hmm.
God, when you're a veteran
Mm-hmm.
and you've been in service long enough, it's kind of old hat, but
Mm-hmm.
that was kind of fun.
Sure. All right. Now, how do you think your time in the service affected you, or what did you learn from it? You were basically just the same guy the whole time?
Yeah,
Okay. Do you think you learned anything from that helped you later?
no,
Okay.
I don't think so. You know, I don't, you get a certain amount of discipline, and you get some adventures, like when when that bomber hit the Empire State Building.
Okay, yeah, talk about that. I mean, why were you in New York?
And just, weekend pass.
Okay, now were you
There was
stationed?
a hotel there that the government bought, and that you could stay there for 3 nights. And usually had 3 or 4 guys in the same room. Some on the floor, some on the bed.
Right.
But we had room service and food and all that stuff. That they treated us. It was a great place to be.
Now, were you stationed in that area someplace?
Well, I was. Yeah, we were right on the base. I forgot exactly where it was.
But was it in New York Harbor somewhere? Yeah. Okay, yeah, all right. But so you were in the hotel. Now, did you see the plane hit or just hear it?
Yeah.
Okay, can you just describe what happened?
I heard it, and we were near the window, and I'd been on an air base, and I said, you know, that plane's flying too low. So we ran to the window and we saw it hit the Empire State Building.
Right.
It was a twin engine B-25, and of course they were all killed. But usually had a crew of 7, so.
Now, did you ever learn why that happened? Was the pilot killing himself or anything? Okay,
No.
all right. How much damage did it do to the building?
You know, I don't even remember.
Okay.
It was, well, it knocked some stones, some of the brick away.
Yeah.
But other than that, it didn't damage anything. It was happened to hit an area that didn't have any construction. It was part of building, building, but that was it. But
Yeah. So it was. We think of planes hitting skyscrapers. We now think of 9/11, but that was much bigger and much worse. All right. So we were talking about saying, you know, do you think the time in the service affected you? And you were saying not very much, but you did get to see some interesting things and go some places you wouldn't go otherwise.
yes, right.
All right. All right. Anything else you can recall that you want to put on the record before we close out the interview?
Oh, I don't. It was so far back.
All right.
I was a kid then. I mean, I was in my young 20s.
Yeah, it was a lot, 70 years ago. That's a long time ago.
Yes,
All right. Well, thank you very much for talking to me this morning.
oh, that's quite a. I enjoy it.
All right.